record on. Okay, so we are here for the Government Transition Advisory Committee Workplan Workgroup meeting. So I created an agenda for us to kind of get to at least part one of work planning, just because I think when I was thinking more about what we needed to create together to be able to have that schedule that you all needed to do your work, it seemed like we probably needed to come together on some general, like, this is how we structure it, this is what we want, have some time in between to have a draft kind of written, and then have time to review that, and then kind of, be a little bit more iterative, but start with a foundation of understanding what we all kind of want from this, to then pass over to GTAC as the full committee. So, oh, I said that. So the meeting is recorded. We'll post it to the committee website. So I think first I wanted to orient us into our larger transition work plan to see where we are. Because I think, once we have these things on paper, understanding what the priorities are in terms of where you all think you can make the biggest difference and influence the process the most, and where committee members really should have a say, I think it'll really help us, figure out our plan moving forward. So I'll just do that really quickly, and then we can dive into doing the work plan discussion. And I have a mural board that I'm hoping we all can use. And I also acknowledge that it could get tedious depending on how we want to do that. So I also created a Word doc if that didn't work, but I'm hoping we could give that a try. Can I get a thumbs up? Does that sound good in terms of our hour here? All right. Is that a cat, Zach? Is that your cool? I was like, I see a furry friend. Oh no, did you freeze? Okay. Whoops. Can y'all see this? Next. There you go. So again, I just wanted to revisit a process. We can change it as we need to, but I was thinking, after I kind of go over where we are in the transition process, you all can kind of review and comment. I put draft objectives, but just the purpose of why we're creating this work plan. So we'll kind of discuss that so we're all on the same page. And then the next piece is organizing GTAC scope of work into major topics. So essentially, I took the information from CAO Mike Jordan's letter, as well as the letter from the mayor, and also sort of this other bucket of stuff, to see, like, okay, is this all the work that GTAC needs to accomplish? What's missing in there? So we'll have a chance to look at that. And then after that, we'll kind of look at, okay, so now these are the topics of work. What do we actually need to do to get that done? So if we could be specific about, okay, well, we're supposed to advise on the voter education strategy. That means we're going to need, time to review and deliberate on it. So kind of our action verbs of, like, okay, what does it take to get to do these things? And then who's going to do the work? Is that like a full committee thing? Is that a subcommittee? Figuring out based on sort of what the level of task that we're doing. And I think at the end, assigning a couple folks who want to kind of work with me on the first sort of draft of, like, okay, this is kind of what it's starting to look like, and it'll be a draft that we can kind of work on for Friday or for the week after. I will kind of add in there that I think it'll be important to have transition staff kind of take a look at where we land with the work plan, just to make sure that any of the tasks in there are, just make sure that they're all doable, and if not, have a dialogue about that, and then potentially even provide feedback on, hey, maybe this is a task that's missing in there, to be able to get at sort of what we need to accomplish. So that's sort of the process. So I'm gonna pause for a second to see if anyone has anything to add or shake up, and we can shake up as we go. All right, y'all, you're trusting the process here. Okay, I can take that. I like that. Okay, where we are, where we're going. Let's orient ourselves a little bit. So, I'm gonna skip this. This isn't as great, as easy to look at as this. So we talked about election methods being the first big scope of work and then type of change. And so if you see, we're like, what? We're like, I can't believe we're all actually like right here close to October. where all of these things like the districting, et cetera, is done. And so a lot of what we need to be doing is around voter and community education campaigns. A lot of those other sort of milestones are done. Can y'all believe next November we'll have a ranked choice voting election? So these are our that's the big milestone we're working toward. And then in terms of governance, so again, September/October, a lot of stuff has happened for the revising of the council operations code, city org recommendations, salary commission complete. So those are things that have happened. Kind of moving forward, we're gonna do some budgeting and the new organizational structure. And then here in July 2024, the budget is gonna get adopted. So that's another piece of GTAC work and advising that that actually has I think probably the most I don't know, forthcoming deadline. And then another milestone to take a look at here is when the city administrator recruitment begins, and all towards that January 2025 new council. So that's kind of where we're at with our timeline, what's been accomplished and what we have to look forward to. Do y'all have any questions?
June, can you go back to the prior slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is the phase 2 ballot referral management and education?
I'll get back to you on that. I think that is sort of just like putting the pieces, the administrative pieces into place to make the ranked choice voting work. But let me just double check that. Terry?
Actually, I think that might be the Charter Commission had phase 1, which is the big amendments that we're working on, but they also referred a bunch of other things to the ballot in 24. So that's probably education around those elements. I think they're like 4 or 6 questions. I'm already forgetting all about that. Does that make sense, June?
That makes a lot of sense. Please ignore what I said, Bill. Because part of, for example, it's like participatory budgeting. There were things that weren't approved,
right, stuff like that
are on that phase 2. Anybody else want to add in there? Mabi, Zach?
I just actually have a question, because I noticed that we're saying that the district plan is all basically set and moving forward. However, with the letter that went out requesting for a longer time frame for the associations to, share the wealth of the information and then come back, is that, and maybe I'm just not paying too close attention to it, but is that something that will eventually change? Is there some pushback on it? And how does that affect us?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, so for the districting, is anything changing around there, especially given the GTAC support letter to extend public comment? So the answer is no. The extending the public comment period was more around the city organization and where civic life functions would end up. And so, it is a relevant, districts are relevant, coalitions, et cetera, and neighborhood associations are very relevant to that conversation, but this piece is already done and won't be revisited. Anyone else have anything to add or questions? Yeah, Zach.
I had one on the next slide.
Okay, well, let's go to Zach and then Terry.
Okay. I'd actually have a question on this slide too. So the first bar with kind of the all of the code changes that are, well, I guess this is not election. Maybe it is more of the second slide. But a lot of the kind of code revision that's going to need to happen. I'm wondering if there's any kind of more detailed insight into milestones that we should be preparing for, planning for, that is kind of only generalized by showing like a full bar.
Yeah, those are additional details that we can get. I did talk to Tate, who was earlier about those. There are going to be, when I was looking at the status update plan of having, I think there's like a code 7 14 and 15 that need to be updated to align with the charter amendments. And so I think those haven't been set in stone, but those are coming. I think the timing that we're trying to meet, I think they're general like November, December, maybe it has its first reading, and then Q1 is going to be chapter 15. So those are definitely things that we'll continue tracking, and we can, I think making it part of the work plan to be able to be like, okay, if this is full GTAC, like Tate, let's get an update, etc. To be able to do this work.
I think it'll also be really useful for our community engagement, just given the fact that, you know, things were voted on today and are discussed about council operations. We're trying to improve civic engagement on the various elements that are being considered and weighed upon by our city council. We should make sure that we've got a keen eye on what's coming to council and all the various facets.
Great, thanks, Zach. And then Terry, you had a question on this slide.
Yeah, I think I'm along the same thinking that Zach is having, and I'm not sure this slide, how accurate it is. You know, today they finalized the code operations thing at city council. But my understanding of that is now we go into an additional, design and development phase of that for adoption by the new council in January 25, which I think they have to do, and that doesn't show up here unless it's embedded in some other thing.
It's definitely more embedded. I did talk to Tate like specifically about that as like phase 2 council operations. And so that's sort of still forming, but it is, I think kind of what you're getting at, I think it's part of community engagement and something that GTAC will be a part of. And so you'll see that specifically in the work plan.
Okay. It doesn't show up here on this
It doesn't.
timeline. All right.
I think it's like melded into one of those bars. So it's a good catch because yeah. Okay, let's get into it, you all. Oh, yes,
sorry, June.
No.
I had a question.
Hmm?
I'm hoping my Wi-Fi is better, but for the begin transition to new bureau structure, is that kind of what we've been hearing about Mayor Ted Wheeler trying to get all the bureaus under the mayor already and like, you know, have an interim city administrator?
I think potentially, I think just more neutrally, I guess, in terms of how this happens, I think that is still sort of forming, but yes, I think the intention definitely was, I think even with the change management plan, is for bureaus to enter into that new city org structure and operating June or July 2024. And so definitely related, but yeah, I'm going to be just neutral on this milestone in terms of the how. I'm like, I feel like I'm not quite sure yet.
Okay.
June, could I ask another question?
Yes, but just wanted to make sure, Destiny, did you have anything else?
I was wondering if we're already going to start modeling the new government, if, you know, GTAC's going to have a more communicative role with, you know, culture building, community engagement, things like that, if we're already going to start putting the wheels on it.
I mean, I think that is part of the future future improvements conversation of like, what does improved service delivery look like? So I guess let's just hold that thought, because I think we'll see that kind of come out in the work plan. Because I think it would be really important to kind of, I hear a lot of values around community engagement and kind of making things work better for folks. And I think even being able to use the work plan as a tool to prioritize some of where the biggest interests and improvements that could be made by GTAC or supported by GTAC could be. All right, Bill, you are last comment.
And pardon my interruption, Bethany. I didn't mean to do that. On the last line of this slide, you know, it says develop and implement community and employee engagement plan. Now, for the community engagement plan, is that GTAC or is this another a related effort from which we could benefit? From, is there is this a related effort that might provide an analogy that could benefit our GTAC work plan?
So it's a great question. So the community engagement plan is that transition engagement plan that the community engagement work group kind of put together. And so as staff, we take sort of the values in there, and that's kind of what we're implementing. So as you all are kind of doing your work too, we're looking at, okay, where are the gaps and how do we fill in to be able to move forward with the engagement plan? So it's something we see as us implementing alongside with you all. And then the employee engagement plan, it kind of is more around some of the change management work that's being done for the transition, for the transition. Yeah. Does that help, Bill?
Yes, it does. Now, is that broader community engagement plan, is that printed? I mean, is that something we can see?
Yeah, I can follow up with that with a link to the transition engagement plan. I think when I had revisited it today too, there's some really great pieces and milestones, et cetera, in there that I don't know, helped me kind of understand the work a little bit better, because I'm sure I don't think I'm alone in feeling like, wow, that's a good amount of stuff that's happening and a lot of engagement. So I really appreciate how y'all kind of volunteered to be part of this work group to organize so that we can implement effectively. All right. I just wanted to start with something easy. So I'm just gonna read this out loud and then just be like, hey, what do y'all think? Do we want any changes? I wanted to make sure that we're all aligned on what the purpose of the work plan, which is to provide a transparent and organized schedule for GTAC's work in advising and providing recommendations on the implementation of their November 2022 voter approved charter amendments. And that ultimately this is going to enhance GTAC's ability and community members' ability to engage in this transition. Terry's like, I don't know. Mobby's like, okay, yeah, that can work, maybe. So, all right, Terry, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. The word schedule is maybe more specific than I think we're going to be able to come up with.
I like your realistic.
But it's good.
Let's manage expectations. You're right. We don't have a set schedule. Some of the schedule is still being put together. All right. Anybody else have anything to add?
An observation, June, as I'm reading this, the first paragraph sounds like it encompasses some of the things that the mayor's letter has told us not to do. But recognizing the parameters, would we want to add something about engaging the community? I mean, because that seems to be one of our main functions, to provide information, education to community groups.
That seems like it would track well. Also, I will say that I'm going to sort of just take folks' recommendations and in terms of using it to kind of draft something to react to. So these are not going to be final. We'll still have a chance to look at it. So that's kind of how I'm going to be taking that input. So thank you, Bill. All right, anybody else?
I feel like work in advising and providing recommendations on the implementation. On the GTAC website, it still says, and I know that we've gotten clarity of what that scope is, but that we will ensure that the charter amendments approved by voters are implemented effectively and efficiently following those City of Portland's core values. I think that's just the heart of it. That's clear for the public to read. And I mean, even though there's a scope and limitations, we will work in advising and recommending and ensuring that it is responsive of community engagement, but also effectively implemented, especially if we're putting on training wheels.
Okay, I like that. Let's also let's maintain some consistency with language we've already used to for the work plan. Okay. Great. We're speeding along. So I put in our deck here, the sort of scope of work from the mayor and the council, and then CAO Mike Jordan here. I don't want us to read them all right now because I want us to try to I wanted to take a look at, well, actually, let's do something right now. If we could just take, let's take 3 minutes to if y'all can just look over these. So when you look at districting, ranked choice voting, right, all these things up here, tell me if there's something that's missing. So if these, except, ignore out of scope, if all of these things on this slide were part of what we needed to do or what y'all need to do as GTAC, think about what might be missing that we should include. So I'm gonna pause us until 2:27, and then we can kind of go through it and feel it and talk about if something is missing. And then again, this is gonna be a draft that we're gonna send out. So if we miss something, that's okay. I think the most important thing is to get enough to be able to put pen to paper. All right, I'm gonna stop talking and give you all 3 minutes. I'm gonna give y'all 1 more minute. All right. Okay, I just want to recognize that Terry, Council Operations Phase 2 is not on this, but it's on the mural board. So is that some, let's go to you first. Let's see, Terry, what is from this, if we're going to use this as a basis for our scope. Is there anything that's missing that you want to point out?
I think, well, I just put it in the chat because
Mm-hmm.
I was bored, I had to do it. The city council phase 2 work that's not related to districting. Now, again, it's the council code and how committees work still needs to be drafted. And that's going to change what council meetings look like. And what council meetings look like are going to be part of the candidate education. So I think there's a lot of work around that. And it probably needs its own category.
Great.
And the other one is, we've got the mayor and council letter, the Mike Jordan letter, but there is the adopted community engagement plan that William was just talking about. And there's a schedule in there for what we're supposed to be doing. And Julia was the manager, drafter of that thing, and we probably have a schedule timeline built into that we should be paying attention to. So those were the things that came to mind.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. And I saw a couple or someone do a thumbs up on both of those. All right, Destiny, you're up. Ooh, there.
Thank you. Two things that I was thinking on for community and employee engagement. I feel like with the proposed city organization, it seems like those would fall under two different places. One of them being Portland Solutions, which is, district concerns, dealing with constituents. So I think that would be a great place for us to put in our efforts and aligning it specifically within a city, a Portland organization scope that has tangible outcomes. And then also on the same vein, I think it would be great to also, what was it? There's a different program. I think it's like council operations where, yes, council operations is a new office where council will be, communicating with legislators and city employees. So also potentially when we look at the city organization on creating an engagement plan, those are two specific places we can be strategic and impactful, long-lasting impacts with, all the information we're learning. And then for definition and measures of success, this is kind of getting to Terry's point, but a little bit different. We will be here until 2025, and so we will see the new city council. So I feel like it would be great to start actually increasing the communication feedback loop between city council and GTAC so that we can talk about what's working, what's not working as a public body here.
Thank you, Destiny. So I just want to make sure I capture those sort of three things. So there are two sort of pieces that you're saying that a more strategic focus of GTAC or in terms of opportunities. One is around thinking about Portland solutions as it pertains to some of the districts and outreach, et cetera. The second one is council basically sort of more the citywide communications function to be able, because then that is sort of more of a within employees and externally to the public. And then the third one is when you're looking at definition and measures, how do we think about this more in terms of being more iterative and talking to city council about some of the feedback that's being heard, because we don't need to sort of compile information and wait till the end. We can kind of do it in a better loop. Those are those three things?
Yeah, and I can put in the chat.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Mobby, Bill or Zach, do you have anything to add?
I didn't.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Me as well.
Okay. So, all right. Dang, you all are efficient. Okay. I'm gonna then look at that. There's a link. Let's go there. Can y'all see my screen still? Oh, you can't. No, you can.
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
All we see is your presentation PowerPoint.
Oh, let me. Oh.
I just posted it in chat the mural link that you'd shared in by email.
Okay, let's look at this again. Okay, this is also kind of maybe small. So I wanted to make sure I capture the other stuff that's not included in there. And so I think one again was the council operations phase 2. I ended up putting it in an above section, Terry. So that one's covered. Whoops. So I think And the next one is, I think this is kind of what you were saying, Destiny, the communication mechanism between GTAC and council. And then I also think sort of what you're talking about is these where the sort of Portland solutions feedback, et cetera, could land is around the future service improvements piece. So those recommendations to new city leaders, but I think there's also probably room above to add more pieces around engagement and districting. And then there's this last thing that I added because I wanted to understand from you all is I think, for example, the Independent District Commission, they kind of came up with a final report at the end. I just wondered if GTAC would be interested in, is there a final deliverable that you all kind of wanted to work towards? Is that sort of these recommendations for future service improvements that's specifically drafted by GTAC? So I don't know that's sort of a 4-person decision right now, but I think it's a question that I have for you all of if we're working towards a final deliverable. So I just wanted to just reflect that that sort of captured here, though, Destiny, the pieces around the districting, if you don't see them above or quite reflected, let's add them somewhere. Okay, so we're gonna do this by, let's start with something easy, and then we're gonna go to something a little bit harder, and then and see how far we can get until 5 minutes till. I'm glad it looks like you all are on desktops, which I should have said. That would have been best. Ooh, Bill's here again. Okay, so let's start with something easy. So I'm gonna go to the very top. So community and employee engagement was a scope area that was given in the CAO Mike Jordan's letter. And so these were just to see if there was additional things we needed to add here. And so I copied what was in the letter below. Can you all read that? Should I make it bigger? You can read it. Okay, I get a head nod, some head nods, everyone head nod. Okay. And so I separated into GTAC or subcommittee or work group or ad hoc work group in terms of who would do what. Let's just put your best thinking. It's never, again, this isn't final. I think putting something pen to paper is good to just at least look at. So one of the things that GTAC already did as a task or deliverable is approve a community engagement plan. But I know that there was a work group or subcommittee that created the community engagement plan. So important dates I feel like it's to note is that October 19th, council approves a new city organization. I don't know how relevant that, has relevance, but I wanted to give you all, maybe let's do a sprint for like 2-ish 3 minutes to see, okay, if we were going to meet, this piece of scope that was given by Mike Jordan, what are the tasks that we would need to do as GTAC or a work group of GTAC to be able to complete this? Does that make sense? I feel like I have some confusion. Anyone?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm going to put this out here, but I don't know that those questions, these particular ones, in Michael Jordan's letter were much more than rhetorical questions.
Mm-hmm.
That in GTAC's review of change management, for example, if we can't have these questions in mind when we're doing that, give advice. I don't know that these were specific questions that need a work group with specific answers.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I guess maybe so, for example, one of the tasks might be if we're looking at this piece of scope that was our questions, right, to weigh in on. Right? I mean, like it wasn't specifically a scope, but questions that they would want GTAC to weigh in on might be
Well, I guess, I mean, I like the major scope area of community and employee engagement. That's something that we should be involved in. But I think our work plan on that isn't just answering those questions. It's like applying those questions in our analysis of the change management plan, for example, and our giving of advice. So what the deliverable is, I think, is giving advice on community and employee engagement. And when we want to do that is when those plans are being adopted and considered by the transition team, right? And I think that's all we need to say about that.
Do you think then when you are looking at any sort of community or employee engagement plan, that is a thing that should be reviewed by the full committee or a work group? Like, I think trying to also then distinguish what level that might go into.
Yeah, and that's, I don't necessarily have an opinion on that right now, but that to me sounds like a priority question, probably for the broader GTAC. Like, given all of these things that are going to be in this major scope area first column, how many of those things can we have a work group for?
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate you talking that out loud. I think from that, I think one of our tasks would be just advise on any community engagement plan, like a sub plan or something that's specific to something that comes up, or the employee engagement plan. So basically, pretty much hearing a representation and then providing feedback.
Yeah, but I think we also, I guess, have an implementation role too. Like, we're supposed to be doing chunks of community engagement, and that has to get done. And we're doing that ad hoc right now, kind of, but that would be in the work.
I like that. So then the quarterly, or I guess the GTAC presentations in community is part of the work plan. We're capturing everything y'all are doing. Okay, let's go Bill and then Zach.
Yeah, Terry's discussion raised the comment I was going to make. It seems there are two functions here, and I think you've captured them. One is advising the city or advising on or reviewing other community engagement plans. But second, we need one for ourselves.
So I think then it's kind of then resending that engagement plan out to make sure that we're tracking to that. So I guess maybe that's sort of track how we're doing on our community or on the transition engagement plan. Okay, I have a head nod from Destiny. All right, Zach and then Destiny.
So I don't know if this is the appropriate space, but thinking about the kinds of questions that we've received in our GTAC, like community engagement, presentations in the community, I feel like we need to have some deliverable or way of representing the questions, concerns of community members in a way. I know that we're providing through the engagement form of, a way of representing who we talk to and like a couple of questions, like basically from memory or whatever. But I do feel like there's that loop is not being completely met, and we need to be much more intentional about finding an answer to the questions that have been raised, that an answer can be found, and going back to the communities and being able to be responsive to them. And so I would think that might look like working with Nicole or whoever, I'm assuming it's Nicole because she's doing all this public comment, like digestion, but ensuring that we can seek an answer out for any non-rhetorical question, right? To then be able to say, okay, that's connected to, for example, Terry and my meeting with Rose City Park yesterday. We now have an answer, or we have something that has come from the city so that we can respond to them appropriately and make a connection and improve the relationship that exists or sometimes doesn't exist between the city and community.
I think that would be, feel like that's also just like a good process improvement for us to be able to do. For example, Lori had a list of questions that she provided and we sent back answers, and I think they would be beneficial for everyone. But it also just feels like kind of got to get organized in its system of how we do this, because it's starting to get to be a lot. So
It
how do
gets
we also
unwieldy, and I
track?
think some of that is like we need to be intentional about our roles within these GTAC presentations. We're calling ourselves into them 2 at a time, and we can make use of the extra resource to document and improve our way of, you know, internalizing and preserving the questions that we're receiving. And then I also think that, you know, there could be a universal FAQ that's developed out of this kind of resource, that some of these questions are city operational, but I think it would be really useful for the city to know that those questions are kind of unanswered right now, and that they need to be revisiting them in both how they structure government, but also how they provide that information on a regular, or like structurally within the website, but also like people don't necessarily use the website either. And so
Mhm.
making sure that it's clear with Rose City Park, for example, like Halsey is getting considerable renovations by Portland Bureau of Transportation. I've lived here for 4 years and haven't gotten any sort of engagement by mail or any other seemingly accessible information about the change that's happening. And so then it's the presumption is they don't even want to hear from us. They're just going to
Mhm.
do that work. So I think these questions could be both directed to a future city administrator, but also need to be directed to the bureaus who are responsible for community engagement. So it's
So
not just like a civic life issue. It's not just a city administrator issue. It's like city engagement writ large.
So I guess I'm hearing kind of two things with a general theme of we need to build trust with the public. And so what does that feedback look like? Feedback loop look like? And so there's one piece of it as we get questions around the transition when y'all are going out to do your community presentations and being able to get those answers and make sure that, yes, we're gladly know we're happy you did this. These are the answers to your questions, and how do we make that a little bit easier to do? And then I think the second thing is you all are not only hearing questions, but some feedback of how people want things to work. So how do we capture that? And how do you know that it's going somewhere? So then when we have those recommendations that we provide to council, it's like, hey, we've been building this list for the last year. And so that at least when you go into those meetings, for example, and I go to meetings, right? Like we can all be like, yes, we are collectively, working on this together. Isn't just a thing we're like, okay, we did this engagement. That's kind of what I'm hearing, two things.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that could be represented. Like the problem is that because this can get like incredibly onerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and for some, and I'm looking straight in the mirror on this one, like just remembering to do the engagement form in a timely manner so that I can actually remember the questions that were asked is a challenge.
Mm,
But some form of like action after action report or something along those lines where we've incorporated it into a routine of the presentations would
mm-hmm.
be, I think, a really useful tool to leverage. We've got, already agreed upon having a second body to help with observation, response, but also documentation. And I'm not saying that that's the best way of doing it, but that was a successful way when Lori and I were meeting with North Portland's. Was, one person presents, the other person is just like documenting all the questions that come in. We could also try to change the nature a little bit of the meeting. So in addition to having just a verbal Q&A, we have an anonymous, we're resourced to have an anonymous questions and concerns box or something of that nature, so that we don't actually have to do as much of the heavy lifting of documentation. We could say, thank you for your question. Please also write that down so that we have documentation for it. And that makes our job a whole lot easier from memory.
That's a great suggestion. All right, we'll go Destiny and then Terry. And then I think after that, we'll do a little bit of the council operations piece in terms of what tasks we need to do, and then maybe see if we can assign a little bit of homework so that then we can get this into a document. So Destiny.
Yes. What was I gonna say? Let me put in chat from my earlier comment. But I feel like for community and employee engagement, other than like the employee data report that they gave us, I don't believe when I reviewed it, there was like employee comments. They're just like, from the data, we can infer this. And I remember when we were onboarded, there was like an employee session that I believe Mike Jordan held, but the question part I think was left out. So like, I don't really know what city employees are thinking, like verbatim, I know transition team is very passionate and great and spearheading to get this implemented, but I feel like for me, I don't know what the employee real rhetoric is. And so I feel like it would be interesting to hear from employees what their concerns are, what their questions are, for that to be, actually actionable. And for me, I feel like this is so big, huge, and as a volunteer, I'm like, okay, but where do I fit in, right? And so, things like community employee engagement, I really think from the draft, I really feel like we could be strategic in pointing to Portland Solutions and council operations. Those are the two main bodies. What is the communication plans there that staff and council we recommend they implement? Things like that. I think that's more tangible. That for me feels more actionable when it comes to that. And so I'll put that again there.
That's helpful. And so if we were gonna, I think, so I just just really quickly to reflect back for the employee engagements, okay, if this is part of our work plan, we actually need a lot more information that we're giving to be able to inform on that. And at the same time is maybe the best the better focus or would be around, you had talked about districting and Portland Solutions, as there's a bigger, maybe GTAC is more better positioned to inform on those pieces of change. Okay. Terry.
I think, I'm sorry, it came back to Zach's point of he's lived here 4 years and he hasn't heard anything from the city of Portland. Same, I have not heard anything. Why am I going to go to my partners that I work with and I care for and respect, take their time, and then the city just drops the ball? That to me seems disingenuous. I feel like that continues the racist model of just leaving community out and highlighting really resource heavy organizations. I would like to move away from that. And so how do we strategically implement that in a new government?
Okay. I really like the prioritization focus. Okay, Terry.
Yeah, just Zach was being really nice because at last night's event, I was sitting there watching Zach field great questions from the audience, but not taking any notes, and I should have been. And but the very specific idea that we have two people there doing things, it'd be good to standardize that somewhat. But a broader point, and I think is really important, and this may be just jumping straight ahead to the advice thing, is that we at GTAC, a bunch of volunteers in a temporary structure for a specific purpose, developing community engagement and developing the relationship with the community, we're the wrong people to be doing that. When you're looking for the community to be able to trust and understand what the government is telling you and make it reliable and continuous over many years of government projects and that sort of thing, that's not us. We're not going to be there. And it was a concern of mine very early on that we're standing between the community and the transition, and we're making it worse, kind of, in a way. We're extra bodies doing work, but we're not. We're just a pass through, and we're unreliable at that. So I would suggest that some of our advice around community engagement should be along those lines. But
I think I hear you on that, Terry. I think this is definitely a different and challenging model, especially if, like you said, building trust, it happens after a pattern of feeling like you can, people are doing what they say they're going to be doing. So I definitely can hear that difficulty and challenge in there. And so I think I'll talk to Julia about that a little bit more to see if there are any even solutions we could propose in terms of having staff like try to be at every one of those as well, to be able to kind of have both of that. Maybe it's like a staff pair or something. But yeah, but
I'm not asking for a fix, that June and Julia work overtime because they now are in charge of doing all the relationship building over more years than we're going to be a committee. But it's something that the city needs to think about if they're serious about community engagement, that it's going to take resources that are not volunteer committees.
Yeah, no, I hear that, Terry. We don't have to, we all know who else it's going to be hard to fix that problem, huh? Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. And so this is sort of the exercise that of like, okay, so here's the thing we're supposed to do and what are those tasks associated so we don't miss anything. And so I guess what I'm wondering is I would like to kind of just based on what I've heard from you all, write something up and then send it to you. But then maybe if we could just have different folks assigned to just taking a look at a certain section. So I'm going to take this and put it into just like a good old Word document. And so I'm going to just leave, community employee engagement as it is. And so this is the next heading of change management and council operations. Who wants to review this section? So sorry, let me take a step back. So I'm going to draft something by tomorrow end of day. For those of you who are going to be at the Friday meeting, I think that's most of you. If you could just review what I have sent you in terms of the tasks and offer improvements or suggestions, we'll start with you in terms of offering those changes in that meeting. So I'm hoping that we can kind of do a little bit of, have a primary editor on a section. So change management, which is both, when I separated it out from Mike Jordan's letter, it's based on its changes to council and then change management around employees. And so I think Terry, you were about to volunteer for council operations.
Well, can I just ask for clarification? So Junior, you're asking us between now and Friday to try to do the brainstorming that we did collectively as a group on the community engagement for all the other pieces that we haven't touched on yet?
No.
Okay.
So what well, actually it's a little bit of both. Okay, so
Okay.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this and then draft some tasks based on our general conversation. And then what I'm going to do is put you all, whoever is assigned, on the spot on Friday to be like, okay, so based on that draft that I sent you, what should be added, what should be taken out, and what questions do you have?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's yeah. Just, I don't know, speaking for myself, that's a really tight turnaround.
Yeah, it is.
Between, getting something end of day today and then midday Friday to have reviewed and thought constructively on.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're trying to race through this, so I understand. And that will hopefully make the conversations a little bit more directed on Friday.
All right, does anyone want internal change management? Oh, Bill, yes.
I'm willing to volunteer for change management. At our last GTAC meeting, the contractor, whose name I forget, has a draft change management plan, and I asked for a copy of it. I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm thinking that might provide some analogies for what we can do. So, given that I sort of said I'd look at that plan, it would be helpful. I can look here too.
Thanks, Bill. And I know that folks maybe have to drop off because it's 3, but I'm going to continue going through this with whoever's left. And then, if there's one that's not taken, then, we'll all look at it as a group. Voter ed, does anybody in particular want to review that section after I put it together?
I will.
Okay. Hobby. All right, transition budget. All right, let's go next. Definitions of measures of success. Destiny. And then expansion of council and creation of 4 districts. Terry. All right, and I think we're at the last 2. Mayor/city administrator. Zach. And I mean, I always love 2 reviewers. And then this other stuff, let's just leave this. And then it's still up in the air. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your feedback. And I will see you again on Friday, and we'll send you a draft, hopefully tomorrow morning. Happy, what is it, Wednesday? Happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.